everybody. I'm Tom Basso.
I'm Z Garcia. Hi.
And you are?
I'm Sam, the dork.
Well, that's the most truthful intro we've had in a while. All right, so welcome to Dice Tower Dive. It's been a while since we've done one of these because the weeks we've been out, there have just been other things going on. This is where we take a look at a topic and try to go into a bit more detail on it. So today, we are taking a look at BoardGameGeek.com. I would be lying to say there's a more important board game website out there. It's easily the biggest board game website out there, to the point where I would say it's bigger than the next 20 combined.
Sure.
And that includes the
bet.
Dice Tower as one of those 20, probably. Now, there's starting to see a lot more discussion show up in other places like Reddit and Facebook. A lot of discussion has moved to those spots. But as a sheer depository for reviews and everything else in board gaming, Board Game Geek is the place. And I would say it's one of the websites that if there's 365 days in the year, I'd check it 360 probably. And I check it almost every day.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe when I'm traveling or something, I'm not checking Board Game Geek.
Right.
But I check my email.
Pretty much there almost every day. Yeah.
I check Board Game Geek to see what's going on.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too much into the history of Board Game Geek because I don't know it as well. When did you first find it yourself?
I just looked up actually before we started when I signed up, which probably was not long after I found it. And I signed up in February of 2005.
Where do you find that information?
It's under your account. Just go to your My Geek up here.
Right. And under account?
Profile.
Oh.
I want to look mine up too.
Scroll down. Scroll down.
There it is. Registration date. August 10th, 2002. What was yours?
2005, February 2005.
3 years.
Late to the
3
game.
years. That's so...
I was busy playing Toys R Us games.
All right. So, anyhow, I am looking here at an interview with Scott Alden that I did, and this was back in.
Well, la-di-da.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, I was looking for this. This was back in May 2005 when Z was joining the Board Game Geek. And so Scott Alden, or Aldi as he's called by many people, is by far the tour de force of Board Game Geek. He has a whole staff, a lot of administrators. We're certainly not disparaging any of these administrators at all. There's a lot of people who really put a lot of effort into Board Game Geek, and it's a team effort. But he's the boss. He's the brains. He's the guy who got it started. And he started it in around 1999 or in 2000, actually in January 2000. And the main reason he started, and he said this in various places, was he had a friend, Dirk Sulko, who was the co-founder of Board Game Geek, and he is no longer with Board Game Geek. They separated a while ago. But Dirk knew all kinds of information about board games, and Aldi said, where are you getting this from? Well, there's this private mailing list, the Desert Island Gamers, Diggers. It's a Yahoo or a Google, some sort of group.
It was definitely Yahoo.
It was Yahoo? Yes. I actually was in this group for a while. Well, I still am in this group. This group has since, there's nothing mentioned in it nowadays.
Right.
But it was like, here's new games coming out. Here's information about these games. And he finally got an invitation to join this super exclusive group. You had to be nominated by someone and seconded, and then no one says anything against you to join the group.
Yep. I remember going through that because you said I needed to join it. And after that, I was like, why am I in this group? I could just go to the Geek.
Well, right. Well, he said that was the thing. He said that there was all this information. Why is it being kept to this group? Why can't the public have it? And that's where Board Game Geek came from. Now, when Board Game Geek started, you wouldn't recognize it from today. There's a lot of changes that have been made, and sometimes we have complained together about, man, I wish Board Game Geek would change this. I wish they would look more modern, blah, 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 blah. But the fact is that if you go back and use a Wayback Machine and look at it in 2000, it was very, very different. You essentially could look up games. What's the first game ever added to Board Game Geek? Number 1.
I don't know. I used to know that, but I don't know.
That's a trivia question. It's actually DMocker.
Oh, that's right.
Here, let's switch to, we're going to let you guys look here at Board Game Geek. So this is a web page. We'll talk a little bit about how we use Board Game Geek, but this is one of the things. Now, Board Game Geek, if you're new to this website, I would argue it could be overwhelming.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very overwhelming, actually. I don't think I know how to use a lot of the website, and I check it every day, but I have very certain things that I'm checking it for. But I'm pretty sure I don't know how to use maybe, I don't know, at least a third of what's there.
Is that...
No, I know how to use it.
All right, so a couple things that are interesting here. One of the things about Board Game Geek is pretty much everything is clickable and linkable. So
Yes.
This is DMocker, and here it tells you how many ratings there are. This is one of the things that I always go to when I'm looking at Board Game Geek. Right underneath the name, it says ratings, but I don't click on those. I always click on comments. It says 1.8 thousand comments. Then they come here below, and this is a lot of comments. But I look and read these comments, and sometimes I'll go over here and I might just read the 10 comments, which is not super useful, but those are the people who really like the game. And just putting a rating in doesn't mean a lot to me, but having the comments there can do a lot for me.
Right.
And then sometimes I'll go and read the ones, like, okay, so we go here, and the ones aren't so useful. Like the 9s and the 3s and the 4s, those are kind of useful to me to read them. So what do you think a one person said about this? There's like...
I don't know. They said not a game.
I don't mind long taking games, but this one is just terrible. Grr. Maybe again if I get to peruse the rules.
Well, that's not a 1, man. A 1
Way
is
too long for what
never
it
a
is,
game.
and no amount of skill can make up for being excluded from player deals. A dull, tedious, political adult game that goes on way too long. All right, so that's one thing that you can do on a website. That to me is one of the more useful aspects. You can look at the breakdown of it. At the very top here, it shows you the overall ranking of the game, which I think people put more stock in that than is needed. Like if a game's ranked 1,700, you could be like, oh no, there are 17,000 games in the thing. That's still in the top percentage of those games.
Well, there's algorithms that go into giving these things rankings that are not necessarily a true ranking system because they have to make adjustments for the number of people who have rated that game. You know, there's, well, I don't know what the hidden math is, but once you hit 30 real people reviews or ratings, then it gets ranked.
Yeah.
But they add fake numbers in there to make it, to even out the curve.
It's a statistical thing, and I love statistics, but I don't understand it exactly how it works. But essentially, the more ratings you get, it evens out. And they do that to stop new games from shooting to the top of the list.
Right.
Because there's a lot of bias to a new game. A new game comes out, everyone's like, this game's the most amazing game ever, and everyone rates it 10 or 9, and then most people play it, and then it kind of calms down. It also stops, it definitely back in the day, and we can remember this over the course of history, there were people who tried to manipulate the ratings.
Yeah.
It definitely happened. They didn't have the system in place for a while.
Right.
I remember when Duel of Ages came out, he was so excited because it shot to the top for a while. And then...
then people played it.
No, but
Yeah.
it was one of those games where a lot of people don't play it,
Right.
and therefore don't rank it.
So the people who did play it figured they would like it anyway, and so it got high ratings in a vacuum. Yeah. I do wonder if it might be better for games to simply not be ranked unless they had way more ratings, which means a lot of them would be unranked.
Sure.
But then you do get a truer read.
No ranking system is perfect. We'll never come to that, but BGG's is pretty good. So the other information here on the page here, we see the 3 to 5 players. I like this. Again, the community will often tell you what it's best with. Like this one says best with 5.
Well, these are a lot of new things that they've implemented. The website has, over time, shifted from a place that contains information, raw information, like this place between 3 and 5 players, to people making commentary on those things. And there was, for the longest time, there's been the ability to do like, a session report. I'm going to write a session report. But now you've even got things like that where the game says 3 to 5 players, but the user base can vote on what they think of that. And so you'll end up with things like, the community says really 2, 4, and 5, and best with 5. That's super useful, and I like that. Now, I think a lot of people don't ultimately vote on those things, so it's not as useful, but I do like that a lot, and then the same thing, the age doesn't necessarily matter to me, but that's another thing where, the game might say 14 and up, but the community says, a 10-year-old could play this or higher. So I like those things quite a bit. The weight is interesting, but I don't necessarily care about that.
The thing about
nebulous,
the weight
it's
is
hard to put a finger on what a 4 means to you versus me.
Well, you also find
useful.
things like Advanced Squad Leader or Starfleet Battles, which is one of the most advanced games there is, and it will have less than a 5, which means people said there's more complex games out there, which makes no sense.
Correct, right.
But there are things, again, if you like a game, you can click on the designer here to see more of their games. You can see the artists and the publishers. Then you can click your own rating, so you can see my rating here is an 8 that I've done to this. Is it in my collection? You can log plays. I don't log plays, but some people do this. You can like a game, be a fan of a game. So I can click that. Now I'm a fan of the game. Now I'm not. You can subscribe to it. Now subscriptions are a two-edged sword, and this means if anyone says anything about this game, you'll find out about it. Super useful. However, if it's a popular game, you will get a lot of that.
Right. And that's also a fairly new thing, subscribing to stuff.
It's been around for a couple years.
It's been around for a couple of years, yeah, but I remember when they first, I still remember vividly the post where they said, you can now subscribe to everything. Hey, there's a thread going on, you want to hear this conversation, subscribe to it. You like this person's photos and you want to see what they post, subscribe to them.
Well, that's actually
and that's one of those things
my
that
number
I thought,
one use of this the
amazing.
website. So I have, for example,
Subscribing to posts, you mean?
yeah, up here it shows me my subscriptions. So I click on this. Now I've just gone through my subscriptions, but you automatically subscribe. So I just recently did a review of Wreck Raiders.
Yeah.
So someone commented on that, and there's a thread about Stonemaier distributors, and I decided to subscribe to that thread.
To read it, right.
Right. So then I just go up here to the top, and I click next, and it takes me to my next thing. I read this, blah blah blah. Then down here at the bottom, which you can't see on the screen there, but there's a little thing I can hit. Don't worry about it. And then I pop to the next one, and here's the Wreck Raiders thing about the comments. Then I go here to the top, and that's it. There's some geek mail there that I get from people. Although the geek mail,
You cleaned that up.
I did for the purpose of this video, because this was like, it said 4,000,
Yeah,
786. Well, that's because
Took a while.
you can set Board Game Geek up to send stuff automatically to your email.
Correct.
So I just do that. If someone emails me through Board Game Geek, I respond back through my email, and it goes back through them.
I don't
what I
think he
did.
actually does that.
That's
I
the
just think he
same
has
thing.
4,000 things.
So one of the things I also use all the time in Board Game Geek is this advanced search. And we use this
Yeah,
all the time when we do our top 10 list. So if you click on advanced search, if you've never used this, so maybe I want to look for games that came out in 2019 so far. So I'll type 2019 to 2019, games that came out in that thing. And I always do games that are ranked between 1 and 10 and have at least 10 ratings, because that clears out all the games that have 1 rating or whatever, or 8. And then you can do other things in here. Sometimes we're looking for games from a certain category, games that have dice in them. And you can click them off, or I can take them out. I don't know that I almost ever use these minuses, do you?
To exclude stuff, I never exclude things, yeah, but it's there. That is interesting. Like, I hate
No
electronic-
humor.
I hate electronic games. No electronics and no humor.
And then you can do a whole lot of things. I mostly use year published. Sometimes I'll use the publisher. I'll put in a very specific publisher and so on. And then when you click it here like this, then it will list them all here. And here you can sort it by their rank. I usually sort it by, for whatever reason, the number of voters, because I'm looking for usually games that a lot of people are talking about. So in 2019, the game most people have rated is Wingspan by quite a bit, 6,511. Lord of the Rings is 1506, Res Arcana 946. Again, that's because even though we are in May, we're still playing a lot of games that came out in 2018,
Sure.
and so those numbers would be very different. Near the end of the year, this will change. But this is something I use all the time. You can even go in here and click Wingspan. I'll give this a rating of an 8.5. Boom, done. And then it shows you the Greek rating, the average rating. You can put in the status. You know, I could say here, I own it, I want to buy it, it's on my wish list, etc. You can go in here and click on plays, what date, so on and so forth. Again, this can be overwhelming for some people, but to me, seeing all this data here makes me happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can see there's already 6 pages of games that have at least 10 people rating them. Like Kaboom
and
Universe.
like you said, we're in May, meaning the 2 big game release events, I should say, of the year haven't even happened yet.
That's true. And if you...
Ooh, that's what I'm talking
I just picked a random game there, Kaboom Universe.
Yeah, baby.
Or 12 Patrols. I don't know what this means.
Apple.
So when you click on these things, you can also, like I said, you can click on the designer and see what else Scott Alden has done. He's also done a game called Count of Nine and Pocket Landing Ship and Falcon Master and Feathers and Wax. And wow, this guy has designed quite a few games. They haven't got a ton of people playing them, but they're there.
Wax. That's where it's at.
So that's one feature of Board Game Geek. I'm just pointing out a few features I use, the advanced search and the game pages. I would say the game pages and my subscriptions is easily the things that I look at the most.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of things with the contests before, not because I want to win them, but they're actually, some of them, not always, but some of them are pretty interesting, facts. You test yourself about different games and that type of thing. That I've done that in the past a lot, but other than that, it's Geek Mail. I use it a lot because people contact me through Geek Mail a lot, and then I also use it to respond to people on the videos that I post.
Have have they just added these contests? Because normally I would not have those show up on my thing. You can customize your front page. Mm-hmm. It's not what yours might look for. So for me, the announcements and these different things, like for example, one of the administrators sadly passed away, Adam Smiles, and I like to look at the different things here. Board Game Geek News. So back in the day, BoardGameNews.com, run by Rick Thornquist, and then taken over by Eric Martin. Aldi basically just outright bought that, and now it's here. This is one of the things that I like to see. What's the latest news? It will list it there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Blogs. This is something I'm actually about to delete from my front page. Do you read people's blogs a lot?
I never have.
They were more interesting, but if you can see, Tony Boydello was kind of taken over them. They're just not used as much these days. And there's a lot of things that sometimes they were bigger and they get used less often.
I think it's one of the more interesting things about Board Game Geek is that you really can find a little corner of the entire thing that is your corner and live there and enjoy the group that forms around that. You'll find yourself in conversation with the same people who like to congregate there. And I think that's one of the really neat aspects of it, feeling like a community. And it's not that everyone is hanging out in the lobby, you know what I mean? You do have these people who like to go over here to this section talking about maybe even other things. Isn't necessarily about that. These people want to talk about brand new games. These people want to hang out over here and talk about anything else. I like that a lot. Blogs is just not something I've myself have found enjoyable, but it's there's people who do.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Some of the people in the chat, they're talking about how they like to go to the Hot Deals forum. Other people don't care for the recommendations. Other people do care for the recommendations part of the thing. Game design section is great as well. So it's really, the chat is really just kind of talking about how diverse the website is and how, what you were saying, you can find your little niche and live there.
Yeah, one new tool they have is the game recommendation tool, which is something they've had in the past. However, the algorithm they used in the past, whatever that wasn't very useful. And so in the past there was, if you went to a game or you clicked on something you owned, it would tell you other things the website recommended for you. They were wildly random things. Now, it's pretty good.
Where is
this? You just went past it, I think.
Fans also like, is that it?
Yeah. And now they seem to be at least ballpark recommendations, like in the same arena. They are a lot better, and it's one of the newer things. So if you're haven't seen those, maybe you're flying by them, haven't looked at it, I would definitely recommend you look at it. And you can sort of go down the rabbit hole. You know, if you see something, click on that. You should go look at what that game recommends you might like. That's kind of neat. That was one of the things I used to do way back in the day, was just sort of exploration on the website. You know what I mean? Like find one game and then click on a designer and be like, ooh, they did this, I'll click that. And then that would be like, oh, this is a publisher I've never heard of, and I would click that.
Sure.
You know, follow this rabbit hole. Just because I enjoyed reading about this stuff, you know, and sort of absorbing. I wasn't doing it to absorb information. I was doing it because I thought it was interesting. But that's neat. That can be fun. The fact that everything is, like you said, clickable means you can really get lost in there.
So on the side here we have the hotness. This is something I really always keep an eye on because it's just interesting to see what games people are talking about. Now sometimes it's a self-fulfilling thing. Because a game gets in hotness, therefore more people click on it.
Right.
But usually you can see what games people are talking about. So you can see Lord of the Rings is at the top, Wingspan's right below it, Tiny Towns. These are usually hot games that are being talked about. And if you see a game in it that's not hot, that means there's either a controversy about the game or whatever the reason might be.
Won some award, or just got nominated for something, a new expansion got announced, stuff like that.
Now, the general forums of Board Game Geek, this is an interesting thing about the site that is less robust than it used to be, if only because Reddit and Facebook exist. They're still here. I have them sorted by recent, but I usually sort them by active because I'm usually interested in seeing what people are talking about.
Right.
You know, and there's a whole pile of different topics here. Here's videos. It's just I have this one on mine because I like to see what the recent videos are and who posted them about whatever it might be.
Right.
Same thing with reviews down here. And Geek List. Now, Geek List is an interesting thing that was really hot for a while. When they added this, Aldi said that he had seen another listing thing. Listmania, I believe, was what made him think about this, adding this. And when these first came on, I would say this was the #1 thing I used on Board Game Geek for a while.
Geek lists.
Oh, yeah, because it was fun. And the only reason...
I remember making a few of them, and then I was like, this is too much work.
Well, I like doing it. The main reason I stopped making Geek Lists was because we just do it on video, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes I'll sort them, I usually sort them by hot to see like which ones they are. So here's one that's in memory of Tim Conway.
Yeah.
Here's my top 10 Knizia disappointments. And I'll say, all right, so I'll look at that. And then you go here, and the person will talk about it. And then they have the different, you can put board games in. It used to be you could only put board games in, but now you can add designers and artists.
Other geek lists as the item. It can be anything.
Yeah, they really...
That cross-linking is really robust.
And there's some really funny geek lists out there. There's some serious ones like you just saw, the Rest in Peace Tim Conway one. There's a lot of different geek lists out there.
Yeah.
Then there's guilds. Guilds are for specific groups. I'm not a big fan of the word guild. It never really made sense, I guess. It feels very nerdy almost, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, the website's called Board Game Geek, but for me, it gives me a fantasy elves and goblins connotation that I don't know what the other word would be.
Now, most of the guilds that are active, there's tons of guilds in different categories, but there's two main groups that are active. There's podcast/video guilds, like the Dice Tower Guild is very big, very active, and you can see here, there's that. And then the other is there's like a one-player guild, solo guilds, and print and play guilds where people who like the same thing want to talk back and forth.
Exactly.
It's an association of people for mutual aid or the pursuit of a common goal.
Oh, what guild means?
Yep.
Got it.
It does have a medieval association to it, though, but I mean a connotation rather. But I don't know. I kind of liked it. I like the name given to it.
Now, the other thing that I really like about this website, but can be hit or miss, is when you go to the game page itself. So there's forums everywhere in this site, and there are forums for a specific game. So I can go down here to the forums here, and here's hot threads where there's reviews of the game. There are session reports, but what we use it all the time for, question and answer. If I don't know a question about a game, there's a good chance someone has asked that question on Board Game Geek.
Yeah.
And in fact, if someone's asked that question, period, it's on Board Game Geek. Now, unfortunately, it's not always the easiest thing to search.
Right.
Because sometimes, and people are getting better at this in times, but there used to be like, it would I just say, question about the game. And I'm like, well, great, but what is that question? I have to click it and read it to see.
Correct.
These are a little bit easier when it says, any way to implement dice instead of cards. Okay, that's how that works.
The community as a whole has kind of shifted in that direction. It's much more helpful.
And then files. There's another part that I love about
Huge.
Board Game Geek.
Use it all the time. Yeah, this is huge.
Translations of games. If you have a foreign language version of a game, you want an English translation, the files might have it. If you are looking for a better player aid than in the box,
Yes.
likely someone has made one. I printed out many files for Board Game
Tons of
Geek.
stuff.
Here we got a foam core insert plan, how to print out the playmat on legal size paper for whatever reason.
Yeah,
then
when we were playing Batman the other day over at Roy's house, Kenneth had his phone open to the forum page for Batman just for that reason. Whenever we had a rules question, he would look there before we looked in the rule book, or at the same time, one person would be looking in the rule book, we would be looking on the thing, and it made the game flow a lot better compared to having just the rule book in front of us.
Yeah.
Another section here is the market section. So there are multiple things you can do here. They even take you straight to eBay. But the geek market, where people sell games. Now, I used to do this a lot more than I do now, mostly because I don't buy as many games now. But if I'm looking for a specific game, and I just used it a few months ago because I was looking for a copy of, I think, Underwater Cities. And I couldn't find it online anywhere, so I went here, and you can just buy it straight from people. Now, it's the same thing as eBay. You know, you're taking your chance. You're buying from an unknown person, but for the most part, I've had these work pretty successfully.
They do have user ratings though, or
Sure.
seller ratings and stuff like that. So you can still be careful.
Have you ever bought anything through Board Game Geek?
I've traded with Board Game. I don't think I've ever purchased something, but I've done a few trades.
I recall. I know I've definitely traded. I used to trade. But
I used to trade a
I've
ton.
ever bought something straight up. It's possible once or twice. I don't recall.
The main reason I stopped trading is just because of the high cost of shipping.
Absolutely, 100%. I ended up doing it. Eventually, it became problematic just to, never mind the hassle of having to like get the box, get the packing materials, pack it, take it. But then you get there and they hit you for the price of the game you're getting. And at that point, you think to yourself, hold on. I could just buy that game and take these and do whatever I want with them. I could give them to somebody else because it was the same cost to just buy it. And you know, that's an exaggeration, but not by much. So yeah, I eventually stopped.
All right, well, before we go into any more about Board Game Geek here, let's take a moment to jump to our contributors and listen to what they think about Board Game Geek, and then we'll be back.
Hello, my name's Jonathan from Board Game Opinions. Now, I started using Board Game Geek 10 years ago, I think. It's been a long time. And when you first start using it, there's a bit of a culture shock. You know, you get to the homepage, it's like you've gone back in time or something. It looks incredibly outdated. It looks like it did 10 years ago, and it looked outdated 10 years ago. But actually, there is a fantastic gold mine of information on Board Game Geek as long as you can figure out how to use it. And that is one of the issues with the site. It is very difficult to use. But it's also incredibly popular, and once you take the time to figure out how it works, you can find all sorts of really helpful things on it. I mean, I use it probably almost every day. You know, many times a week I'm using Board Game Geek for one thing or another. Anybody in the board game industry is going to be very familiar with that website. It is the #1 website for board games. In fact, I think it's one of the top 2,000 websites in the world. That's not board gaming websites, that's any website at all. It's one of the top 2,000 in the world. That's a tremendous achievement. In fact, I think amongst US viewers, it's one of the top 1,000 websites. So it is incredibly popular, but it's quite difficult to use at first. And the way I got into it really was just by searching for board games. You kind of go to the home page And there's the bizarre contests for games I've never heard of. There's the Gone Cardboard section. I've no idea what that is, even 10 years later. There's sort of random photos and things. What you really want to do is just go to the search bar at the top and search for a board game you're interested in. Once you get to the game page, there's all kinds of helpful information. You know how many players it takes, how long the game takes, who designed the game. And a lot of the time when I go to Board Game Geek, what I'm really after, well certainly the first few times I went there, I wanted reviews. It's actually quite difficult to find reviews of games on the site. There's no reviews tabs. There's a whole bunch of tabs for the game, but none of them say reviews. The way it works is, in fact, it reminds me a little bit like an old-fashioned library. You kind of need a librarian to show you around the place. But there's actually a videos tab. If you go to that, you can see video reviews. And if you go to the forums tab, the part of the section for forums is for reviews, if you want to read written reviews. So that's probably the best place to start. But there's lots of really useful features of Board Game Geek if you play with it. You can subscribe to things, so you get emailed when extra reviews and things are added about a game. You can see what's called the hotness, which is how popular different games are. So if you want to know what the latest games are that everybody's talking about, there's a hotness bar down the left hand side, which is actually very helpful. I often use that. But the best thing to do with Board Game Geek is just to play around with it. It is incredibly useful. Trust me, you just have to spend a bit of time to get over that initial hurdle to start with.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and today we're talking about Board Game Geek, which, as far as I'm aware, is the biggest board game website in the world, and remains such. It's not always the most easy website to use, but it is the website to go to when you're first discovering and as you're in the hobby of board games. I found it back probably 2009-ish, after I became aware of Carcassonne and Catan. I went to a friend's house for board game day, and I played Puerto Rico and Robo Rally there, which just kind of blew my mind, those two games. And at that point I became almost ravenous, which my wife would probably agree, and needed to get more games of my own. And I found Board Game Geek from a friend of a friend, and started trying to find games on my own. I started watching reviews of Scott Nicholson reviews and some other read some reviews on there, and came to I got a full order of like $100, $150 worth of games. These are 3 of the games that I actually bought about 10 years ago in that first order, and it's pretty crazy that I still have them. But I think some of the games that you first discover on your own are sometimes the most special. Somebody's not telling you to buy this game, you didn't play it first. You're just on there doing your homework and finding these games, and you're the one that can then bring them to your friends. And I think sometimes that's the most special feeling, and that those games become more special in your collection because of that. So what were some of those first games that you discovered without somebody telling you about? And I think Board Game Geek is usually a big driver in that. So tell me what you think in the comments. I'm Jordan. Thanks.
Welcome everybody to another installment of If You Like That, You Might Like This. Now this week is something a little different. We're looking at Board Game Geek, so I thought I would mix things up a little in my segment as well. Now Board Game Geek, for me, when I first got into the gaming hobby, was a fantastic resource. I used it a lot at the beginning to look at the hotness or the top 100 games, and for a while I was trying to get all the games in the top 100, figuring that if they were that highly ranked, then they were games I should try. Now I can't say I was disappointed, as many of those games I have thoroughly enjoyed. But the more games I played, the more I felt that there were games that suited me, but maybe weren't that popular with the general public. So in this segment, I'm going to show you 3 games I personally really enjoy, but that fall way out of the top 100 or even the top 1,000 for that matter. So why don't we get into it? Now the first game is called Affliction Salem 1692. This is currently ranked 5,284. Affliction is like a worker placement game where you are placing out your workers on different actions, but you're going to be doing it in turn order. But you don't take the action until everybody has placed, and then they go off in action number order. You're telegraphing what you want to do during the round, and no, that does not sit well with some people, as does the difference between going first and going last in a round is very substantial. Now the theme of this game is indicated by the title. It's set during the Salem witch trials, but it's more about casting accusations and arresting people than the witches themselves. All the character cards in the game are based on real people and families, and most of the cards have special abilities when they're in your circle. So you want to be protecting them so that other players cannot arrest them while you are trying to arrest the people in their circles. There's a lot of back and forth between the different players, with some take that elements, but those can be mitigated to some degree. A really fun game that has fallen under the radar from a small publisher called DPH Games. Definitely one that I would suggest seeking out to try. The second game I want to talk about is called Damage Report. This game is currently ranked 4,788. Now this one is a Kickstarter game, and I don't believe the campaign went that smoothly. Now the game itself is a real-time co-op game where your turns are governed by sand timers. Each character in the game has a special ability, and you'll pick one scenario from the book to play. After setting up the board, you're going to start the main game timer. Then each player will flip their sand timer and start to take actions. The game can be thought of as kind of like a logistics game of each player calling out what they need to fix their section of the ship while trying to figure out how to get their resources to the other players or other sections. When your sand timer runs out, you need to flip it over and place it on the furthest left circle that matches the current life support system. So you want to make sure that life support is not damaged, or it's going to take you longer to do everything. When your sand timer runs out, you flip it again into the next circle until the sand timer is back to the green circle and you can start your actions again. Now this game has always been a hit or miss with my group when I play with it. Some groups really get into it and love the abilities and the stress of the game, while others really dislike the game. And I think that is played out by the ranking, as it's not without its warts and definitely plays better at a higher player count. Now this game is hard to get now because I think it's out of print, but if you see this cheap and you like the stress of a real-time game, you may want to check it out. That is Damage Report. And the final game is called Rhine River Traitor. Now this is ranked 7,731. Now this really seems to be a game that few people like, but for me, it really hit a chord. This game is fundamentally a commerce and logistics game. You are trying to get products from point A to point B to fulfill your contracts. Certain modes of transportation only stop at certain areas, and each mode of transportation travels at different speeds, and they all have a limited cargo space. There is a fair bit of math involved in trying to figure out what the other players are trying to do. If they put their cargo on a ship and paid to stop at a certain stop, then you can piggyback on the ship to stop at the same city, avoiding paying that stoppage fee. But if you want to get your cargo on the ship, there may not be space left. And each container you load on transportation will cost you money. Are you sure you're going to be able to get the exact cargo delivered to the exact time at the best price? Now this is game you will not do well in your first playthrough, as there are a lot of moving pieces to your logistics empire. And if you suffer from analysis paralysis, this game will definitely not be for you. I really have enjoyed my plays of this, but unfortunately many people I've played with didn't, because the amount of math, planning, second guessing, coupled with some luck for what contracts come up and around. The mechanisms of the game are not difficult to grasp, but it's more about the most efficient way to achieve them is where the heart of this game is. Now if that sounds interesting, I would suggest checking out Rhine River Traitor, but remember it is ranked 7,731. Now I hope you have found these games, some of these games interesting. And maybe you'll dabble your toes in the depths of the Board Game Geek ranking to find games that may not be, enjoyed by the general public, but they do resonate with you. I'd love to hear in the chat or comments about games that you love that fall outside the top 1,000 games and you think deserve more love.
All right. Well, Sam had some segments in there about the history of Board Game Geek. Definitely a huge website. 1.6 million registered users. Well, that was in January 2018, so that's probably more than that now. Scott Alden was originally a video game programmer. I know he worked on Doom.
Really?
The re-implementation of it that took forever to come out for a while. Became Board Game Geek, and then it grew in various ways. One of the things Board Game Geek did was they started a convention based on a website, which, we followed suit doing it years later. But Aldi was also one of the first, probably the first person who had a full-time job from board gaming that wasn't involved with being a publisher or store owner.
Yeah, that wasn't making games, right?
Right.
Selling. Yeah.
Because he did it back in 2006. And that was quite a bit before we were able to jump on that bandwagon. So I really like Board Game Geek. There's a lot of you could point to a lot of negatives, and we've certainly sit around and sometimes like, man, I wish the pictures did this, whatever.
I mean, what's the one thing that if you could only change one thing, say I want this to be different, boom, it's different. What would it be?
That's a hard call.
So I got one thing I use a decent amount, and I wish it was more straightforward, and that is tagging. Because I do a lot of tagging of my collection, just for sorting purposes. Like I really just right now need to look at games that play that are whatever this kind of game, or that are only this length. I can hit a couple of tags, and you can cross the tags also. So like short game, light, that is great for 3 players, and I hit all 3 of those tags, and bam, it gives me a pool. But as you modify tags, it keeps pushing you out, and so you have to like click a couple of links just to get back to tagging things. You know, it's one of those things where it resets you back out.
Oh, I see.
You can do it from within your collection.
Check your mic.
Oh, my mic.
There you
go. For me, the thing that I would add to, this is almost like a stupid thing because I don't know if that can be added, but I would like a check mark that says only real / no stupid for pictures. So there's a ton of pictures on Board Game Geek, and you can upload those pictures, and everything is uploaded, right?
Yeah.
So there's pictures of cats in boxes. There's pictures
Beautiful.
of, I don't want to, here's the game that we took in front of a castle of the same name of the game. Here's a picture of 3 people holding the game box up after one, and those are all fine. I mean, I'm not saying these pictures are necessarily bad, but I'm trying to look at pictures of the game. Here's my custom components I made for the game and stuff. I'm trying to like wave through that. I want to see what is actually in the game.
Yeah.
And not all this extra stuff. So I sometimes feel like I'm wading through pictures to get to that.
That's the trick.
But then the oldest pictures show those early prototypes of the game.
Yeah.
And they're also pretty small and bad quality.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, where is just the real game? You know, forget all this other stuff.
That's true.
Like, I'm like, I want to see the game board. Here's my redone game board with Disney theming. I don't care about that.
That's a good one. If you could do that, that's a good. That would be a great, easy. You know, if it was an easy way to get to it, that would be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think you can do it with sort of like, you know, again, sliders and selecting like no modifications, I think, or box cover. You know,
Sure,
tags,
right.
But it's hard to get to what you want.
Right.
What about you? Would you change anything?
No, I don't. I don't. I use it for pretty static purposes. I don't go in and I don't, I rate my games, not even all of them. If I remember to do it, I do that. I don't tag my collection. I don't even really, I haven't even looked at my collection in Board Game Geek for so long. So I'm not really the avid user of BGG that I guess you would expect, but I still use it for informational purposes, you know.
Oh, when we do our top 10s, you're always looking that up.
Always looking that up. So I guess maybe that would be the one, and there's so many different parts, I doubt it's going to change, but the advanced search is probably the one that I would want to see cleaned up a little bit better. Maybe have some genres added, mechanisms added.
That's true. It feels like they should add some, and it feels like someone with brains about board gaming, sometimes I wish they could be like, go through and be like, nope, that's not a rolling right. You know, because sometimes we look through a category, I'm looking for cooperative games, and it will bring up this game like, that's not cooperative. What, someone made a homebrew variant, which is cooperative? No, that is not a cooperative game. You know what I mean? There are these weird categories. Games will show up in them sometimes.
I think it's more the problem is the catch-all big mechanisms like hand management. You know, there are some games that land in there that technically in the vaguest of connections, yes, they are hand management games. Or like set collection. Every game's a set collection game almost. You know what I mean? It ends up being linked to so many things.
The problem is they have these board game categories and board game mechanics. Mm-hmm. I don't really know the difference between them. Categories, if they called it theming, that'd be fine. But then they have here, for example, fighting. Wasn't fighting necessarily a mechanic?
No.
Well, Cran rail system isn't a mechanic either.
Sure, you have used crayons to draw on a map because you are playing games from the 80s.
Okay, is storytelling a mechanic?
Yes.
But trivia is not.
Trivia's a kind of game.
So is storytelling. Come on now.
You're right,
Now you're
you're
being.
right. That's true.
That's what I'm saying. So sometimes, and then they have just, it's like abstract strategy. Okay, action/dexterity, adventure, age of reason. Wait, what?
Yeah, right.
American Civil War, American Indian Wars, American Revolutionary War, American West, ancient. Okay, great. So obviously these are categories of war games. So they must have World War I and World War II. Great. And there was the Vietnam War. Oh, that's not there. Wait, what? Oh no, there is the Vietnam War. I don't know. It just feels like they have some things that there's a lot of and some that they're not.
What about logging your plays? Do you use the Geek to log your plays? I know you used to do it. You do it. You still do it all the time.
I do it to know if I've played. I don't like my numbers aren't necessarily right, but I use it for things like going back and checking what did I play last month because I need to pick a best of the month.
Yeah.
Bloop. This is what I played.
Right.
I might have played something 3 times and I clicked it once.
Yeah.
Just because I need to be like, remind me I played this. Bam.
Well, I know the App Store has the Board Game Stats app. Has that made it over to Android yet? I don't know.
I hate that app because it's so convoluted.
Is it?
It's not It's not that it's a badly designed app. It's actually technologically it's clean.
Yeah.
But the amount of information that they want you to put in there, which a lot of people do, boggles my mind.
Really?
Things like who was at the table, who won, their scores, where you played, how long you played for. And I'm like, listen, I just want to know if I played it because I have bad memory.
Yeah, everyone is different, right?
Yeah,
So
but
some people like
enjoy that. But that app was so not for me.
Quick note, though, if you do enjoy doing that, recording everything about the game. Excuse me. If you do enjoy that, realize that not everyone at the table. I'm fine. Okay, realize that not everyone at the table may enjoy that also. Like, we've finished a game up. I'm like, all right, let's get the next game out. Like, wait, hang on. What was your score? 46. We know I came in last place, but why don't we record that for posterity? Thank you for recording that. And they're like, oh, last time you played, did you get 44? Didn't care. I'm okay not knowing that information. To me, it's like, whatever, the person sitting there putting all that information. Yeah. I get it. You like to keep stats, and that's
okay.
fine.
I like stats. I'm
just ready to get to the next game. I'm like, why are we talking about this?
I just don't like
thanks for recording my super low score.
For me, I love statistics and being able to go back and look at that, but it feels like reading the book for fun, but then writing the book report anyway, and I'm like, nah. I don't like that. Hey, I want to have a discussion about the game. I'm happy to do that after we play it, but sit down and record stats. What time do we start? What time do we end? Everyone's scores. Where are we? Oh, goodness, no.
BG Stats is $2.99 on the Android store. Okay.
I will not die. I think I have allergies going on in there or something.
Just need some Robitussin.
Somebody just suggested you might die from sneezing 3 times?
It says, is
the
he
4th time?
If he dies, who inherits the dice tower?
What? Anyway.
Pretty sure it's
So
his wife.
We have to give credit, or I have to definitely give credit to Board Game Geek, because without Board Game Geek, I don't think Dice Tower would be where it was.
Sure.
My first reviews were on Board Game Geek, and for a while that was the biggest audience for my reviews. Now our biggest audience has moved to YouTube, obviously, but we still have forums on Board Game Geek. We still have a presence on Board Game Geek.
Guild.
Right. It's a big deal, Board Game Geek, and there's been complaints about the Board Game Geek community. I've run into negative people in Board Game Geek community, but I've run into negative people in many, 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 many groups, and I've also met many fantastic, wonderful people through Board Game Geek. My first contact with Z was through Board Game Geek.
Go spend a week on Reddit. You'll be back.
Even Reddit is not so bad compared to like Facebook.
Ooh,
really?
Oh, there's some Facebook groups that are pretty nasty, but. The fact is, there's mean and nice people everywhere. But Board Game Geek does a pretty good job, and Board Game Geek's subscription service and things allow me to skip a lot of that. Board Game Geek lets you hide users, if they're really bothersome to. I don't know if I've used that feature at all.
I have.
I haven't.
And then
That's why you never see my stuff.
No, I have. But then whenever I'm like reading through something and it says hidden, and there's a little in parentheses it says show. I always click it anyway.
I know, right? I do that too. It's like
I'm always like, who did I hide? Like, who is this from that I? Oh, okay, but then I read it anyway. It's kind of pointless. I'm giving myself extra work.
It's like, don't touch the button.
I
right?
have the setting too where it's like, if enough users have reported content, it collapses it for me.
Correct.
And I always open them up anyway.
Yeah,
like,
I wanna
what
see
did someone
I
say
want to see what's
that was so bad?
What's upsetting folks? Yeah.
Anyway, good times and bad times, and we've had a lot of good relationships with the Board Game Geek team. We've definitely have competed with them at times, and then we both did live streaming at things, but we've always gotten along great with them.
Yeah.
They've always treated us well. They run a great convention, a good website. Yes, it's very convoluted and complex, and I wouldn't mind if there was like a front page that was great for newcomers, but maybe that's what's coming. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing project. It's definitely not a website that is done sort of moving and shaking. Now, some of these implementations that they've added on to it have taken a long, long time. And unfortunately, with something that big, whenever they change one aspect of it and everything else around it stays the same, it creates that feeling of like, you feel like you're jumping from one website to a completely distinct one. You know, wait, my links are normally over here, but when I go to this, they're over here. So, again, you're playing a little bit of catch up with that. I think they are as well. But it's definitely, like you said depository. I think the word is repository, but I think it's a good repository of knowledge.
Also suppositories.
At the depository, I also deposit things there.
Do you?
Anyhow,
Do you need a suppository?
we
to do
can talk about this for a week, and maybe I will do some videos showing how I use Board Game Geek in the future at some point. But this is just a little bit of it. If you've never used the website, it's definitely worth it. And once you get used to the intricacies of it, it's something I click on. I look at my subscriptions. I look to see what's hot. Boom, I go on. But I also use it as I'm at a game day. Like, oh, I don't know what happened. Hang on. All right, here's the answer. So that's helpful.
And they do have a group for new user questions, which you can look that up, and if you're trying to figure the website out, you can ask there or look through what's been asked.
Alrighty, well that's it for today. We are now going to go celebrate Sam's birthday. It's his birthday today. He's 52. That's not true.
Wow.
He's 51.
45.
I was close. All right.
Oh, you weren't.
Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia.
Sam Healy. See you on the flip side, folks.
Happy birthday to you, Mr. President.